Hello and welcome back to Radio Free IV. The topic of today's video is a rather simple, rather straightforward one, and it is the election loss, unfortunately, of Republican Thomas Massie in Kentucky's 4th District. So, Thomas Massie, he's a right-wing Republican, he's as right-wing as they come, really. Just normal right-wing shit. I really don't want to list it off because I don't want to get upset because I'm upset on Massie's behalf. So I don't want to ruin that, but Thomas Massie's just lost his election to Ed Galrain in Kentucky's 4th District. And I think there are two really important things to pay attention to be cognizant of that have influenced this election result. But we'll get to those a little bit later. To talk about Thomas Massie and talk about why it is that Donald Trump backed his opponent, Ed Galrain. And by the way, Ed Galrain, from all that I've seen, I mean, what a weirdo. Dude literally just runs around going, yeah, I was in the CIA. But it's all classified. Can't talk about it. Yep, can't talk about it. But Trump knows. Trump knows. Dude, what the fuck? That's not how you run an election. And quite frankly, there is a huge problem these days with people accepting politicians telling them nothing. Politicians are not meant to tell you nothing. If the politicians were there to tell you nothing, you could just as easily accomplish everything that they do in telling you nothing all on your own by covering your ears and going la 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 la. The point of the politician is to tell you something because they're going to be in charge of doing something, okay? So if you're going to vote for somebody who actively chooses not to tell you anything, then, I've got thoughts about your mental faculties and your contribution to our democracy, but that's besides the point. That being said, Thomas Massie has earned the ire of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has endorsed his opponent, Ed Galrain, I believe is how you say it, precisely and exclusively because Thomas Massie voted or co-authored alongside Ro Khanna of Silicon Valley the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Now, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, as we all, I'm sure, are aware to some extent, is the only reason, the singular reason that any Epstein files have been released, that these email communications have been released, that we know anything more than what we knew before Trump was elected in the first place, which is interesting because if I remember correctly, it was Donald Trump and not Kamala Harris and not Hillary Clinton and not Joe Biden, but but Donald Trump himself who said, I will make the Epstein files public as president. Well, he did say, the Epstein one, that's a little different. I've got friends. Many of my friends, they're not gonna like that. But he still didn't make the promise. And he made the promise. He actually made the promise for a single reason. This is really interesting. I'm going to give this a little bit of political education for those who aren't aware. So around 2016, after Trump was elected, there was this contingency of Trump support called QAnon, or who branded themselves as QAnon, right? And the guy Q, he was on like 4chan and 8kun or whatever. And from what I understand, the whole pitch and the whole idea behind this whole QAnon thing was that there's this guy, we don't know his name, but we call him Q because he has a Q level security clearance. And Q's job was to explain to the voters that Donald Trump in reality didn't just win an election. Donald Trump has defeated the deep state. And in defeating the deep state, Donald Trump has angered all of the powers that be. And that at some point in the near future is coming, much like the rapture is coming. Notice the religious similarities because this whole movement, which I'll get to later, is quite cult-like, unfortunately, and we have political responses to that we must prioritize and center in our conversations about these things. But Q promised the day of the rope, which is when all of these Democratic pedophile baby-eating politicians would be hanged. Now, the unfortunate reality is that Donald Trump is Q, or Donald Trump is the Democratic politicians. Donald Trump is Hillary, because when it comes to trying to make this appeal and say, oh yeah, I'll release the Epstein files. Jeffrey Epstein, I don't know him, I've never heard of him. Jeffrey, what a name. Is that like Diary of a Wimpy Kid? I love those books. And that's the response that Trump could have when he was running for president. But now that Donald Trump is president, it's horrible, horrendous that he made this promise because Donald Trump is the Epstein files. Donald Trump, and let's not forget this as well, Epstein died what year? 2019. Who was president in 2019? Simple as that. If you ask me, if there's a crazy conspiracy by all these rich elites to kill Jeffrey Epstein, and you have one of those crazy rich elites as president, I think the dots connect themselves, quite frankly. But that is to say, Donald Trump doesn't want to release these Epstein files. He's been making a huge show of how little he wants to do it. But Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And the way they did so was by what's called a discharge petition, which is when, so usually in the House of Representatives, the way that legislation is brought forward is that the Speaker of the House, I'm not sure how these powers work precisely, but to my understanding, the Speaker of the House is very, very, very important and they're the person who gets to decide which legislation comes to the floor versus which doesn't. Now, a discharge petition, as opposed to bringing a piece of legislation to the floor for a vote, which the Speaker has to schedule, a discharge petition, once a majority of Congress has signed it, automatically becomes law, or automatically goes to the, the Senate and to the president to sign. So by authoring this petition and not voting against, or not voting for the big beautiful bill, blah blah blah, Thomas Massie has earned the ire of Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump is supporting, this Ed Galbraith guy, or he has supported him, and he's won. But what I think is really important to understand about this election is not just the culty aspect. We'll get to that later, but we've got to talk about foreign interference within our elections. Now, this election, so the average congressional race, you're going to spend $500,000, maybe $750K if it's super competitive, maybe $1 million, maybe even a couple of million if it's a crazy, crazy, crazy race, and you're really, you're out there and you're just trying to, put pedal to the metal, fucking get the victory, get the dub, right? Maybe you'll spend a couple $1 million. Guess how much they spent in this election? $25 million. Now, here's the interesting thing. Now let's look at the second most expensive congressional race in history. And this one was around $20 million instead of 25. Okay, look, we're getting real modest here, right? This was $20 million. And who was this? This was George Latimer versus Jamal Bowman. Who is Jamal Bowman? We're going through the list, guys. Sorry. Who is Jamal Bowman? Jamal Bowman was one of the 4 members of the squad. If I am not mistaken, and I don't really feel like Googling this, I believe Jamal Bowman was elected in 2018 or 2020. He's part of the AOC wave, or definitely 2020. Yeah, definitely 2020. But part of the AOC wave, he beat he beat some old fucking carcass, some dude who doesn't give a shit about his constituency. And Jamal Bowman's a great guy. First of all, he's jacked. Homie can lift. He can lift 4 plates. Low key, make him president, But Jamal Bowman was also a school principal, also a real hip hop head. Shout out, and a progressive champion. And one of the issues in Jamal Bowman's progressivism for these powers that be, for these special interests that spent against him, was the fact that he does not support genocide in Palestine. Sorry, apparently that's a no-go. But a no-go for who? And that brings us to the question, why is it that the top 2 most expensive primaries, and we can also talk about Cori Bush's primary, where her opponent, Wesley Bell, who is nothing but an empty suit, a puppet for special interests, an idea, concept of a man, because he sure shit isn't a man fully. This guy, also very well funded primary. This one was about 7 or 8 million, if I remember correctly. And that is to say, there's one country that all of these individuals have in common in upsetting. Thomas Massie does not support the Iran war. Thomas Massie, dropped the Epstein files. Jeffrey Epstein, when you look at who that man was connected with, when you look at which intelligence services he may or may not have worked for, really only 2 come to mind. One is the CIA, the other one is the Mossad. What country is the Mossad based out of? Okay, we don't have to, I don't have to say these things out loud. Quite frankly, I bet no one will see the video if I do. But you have these hugely expensive elections, and this is not the first one. You also have Democratic majority for insert country there. And you have lots of these different groups that spend heavily, not just in primaries, but in general elections as well. Not just in general elections at the congressional level, at the Senate level, but at the municipal. They'll dump, $500,000 in a goddamn school board race if they have to. And that's the issue. The issue is that Thomas Massie pissed off the wrong country. And why is it that when you piss off the wrong country, in this country, in America, that the wrong country gets to come and flood your race with money and then defeat you? I think that's crazy. I think it's absurd. And I think that we must address it as such if we hope in any way to actually make some progress against these people. Because quite frankly, our elections are up for sale. And when you look at who has the money and who's willing to spend the money, who is willing to organize communities around these political causes, for what purpose? There is a group of people who is currently perpetrating horrible crimes in the Middle East, who have many American supporters, and those people are bad. And that's as far as I'll take that. So hopefully this video gets more than 4 views, right? But then there's a second aspect. Second aspect is, why the hell did these people vote for Mr. I'm a member of secret intelligence, but I can't talk about it. Only the president knows what I've done. Dude, what? That's not a congressional representative. That's fucking Batman. Are you going to vote for Batman? Are you going to vote for Batman to be your Why? Batman, you know what Batman would be served doing? Batman would be served doing Batman shit. Batman doesn't need to be writing laws, passing laws, voting on laws. Why? You gonna vote for Batman? It's a ridiculous pitch. But the question is, why was this individual able to win the primary? And the answer to that question is because Donald Trump's support does not rely on engagement with material reality. It does not rely on, how is your day today? How has your life been? How is the president improving your life? How is the president making you a happier individual? Donald Trump's support relies on the fact that some people, they just love them some Trump, brother. And that's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because there's a lot of those people. However, what we also must understand is that that's a horribly, horribly weak position for somebody to be operating in, right? Now, Thomas Massie, I don't really think could respond to this effectively. The reason why is because Thomas Massie is a far-right Republican. If you saw some of the ads that Thomas Massie was running towards the end of his campaign, he literally ran an ad saying, "These woke liberals want to bring their transgender politics to Kentucky, and we're not going to let them. Thomas Massie is against this billionaire woke onslaught trying to," it's like, dude, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. That's really not my business. I'll try to stay out of the Republican business as much as I can, but that's not an effective message because Donald Trump is offering these people a personality cult, and you're offering them in response principled conservatism. But why? Like, principled conservative for what? What are you gonna give them? Nothing? You're gonna give them freedom? You're gonna give them no tax? Okay. Trump says the same shit, And so I think that's really Thomas Massie's weakness, is that there's no political distinction between him and Trump. However, people like myself and those with whom I like to have political conversations, we are not Republicans. We're not bound by the fact that we can't even disagree with this man. Donald Trump offers nothing but a vibe, nothing but an energy, nothing but a oh, we have a great, beautiful bill. It's straight from central casting. Or I like to say, Pete Hegseth, he's launching the war. He's doing it great. He's bombing those little babies, and they're not central casting. They're ugly babies. They're going to die. And that's what your president's offering you. We can beat that. As a matter of fact, very easily. The political work required, to dig us out of this pit that we're in, not that hard. Offer these people something. Offer them something. It's that simple. Massie couldn't do it. And it's really a shame Massie lost, because what Massie's loss represents is a consolidation of the Republican Party. Is a recognition that they don't have to do anything but, lick Trump's ball sack, and they'll be just fine. As long as you keep both balls in your mouth at all time, you'll be taken care of. If you ever take even just one ball out, it doesn't need to be both. You take one ball out, you're in trouble. Because Trump doesn't like when you do that. Trump's not a fan. He's not a fan. He needs them in there at all time, full saturation, and he'll strike you down otherwise. And Republicans are going to listen to that. Look at Lindsey Graham. I mean, look at these Republican judicial nominees. Recently, there were some Republican judicial nominees, and they were asked who won the 2020 election. They go, well, Joe Biden was the president. So yeah, bitch, you're a judge. You're trying to be a judge. You're trying to be a judge, and you can't answer questions of basic fact. You're trying to be a judge, and you can't say with your goddamn chest, yeah, this person won the election. I mean, who even gives a shit? Donald Trump only cares because he's an egomaniacal, narcissist, fucking coward. He can't stand up to his reflection and accept the fact that he's not always a winner. He can't look at himself in the eye, can't look at his children in the eye, can't look at anyone anywhere without saying, I'm a winner, I win it all, I win everything. And that's because he's not a real person. He's hardly a real person. He's greed personified. But again, that is a problem not for people who offer alternatives, not for people who can say, wait a minute, do you prefer this weird fucking bombastic dude who just, wants to touch your kids and fucking bomb other kids in other places, or do you want a little bit of healthcare? I don't know. We'll give you a little bit of healthcare. Y'all down? What about a minimum wage? Would you like your minimum wage raised? Or how about this? How about at the state level? How about Democratic politicians start investing in public works projects? How about Democrats start investing in building up energy infrastructure owned by the state? How about Democrats do anything at all? And I fucking bet you they'll win. And, that's the real tragedy of this Thomas Massie loss, is that Thomas Massie is, absolute bottom of the barrel. Thomas Massie is a far-right Republican. I don't like this guy. I'm not a fan of this guy. I don't agree with this guy. But Thomas Massie showed a whole lot more backbone, as a matter of fact, than most Democrats in facing off this Jeffrey Epstein shit. Because most Democrats are more concerned about the fact that Bill Clinton is implicated by the Epstein files than they are the fact that Donald Trump, our president, is say it with me now, first word rhymes with grapeless, second word rhymes with look into those files. Well, more like I don't know. You know what I'm saying. Put it together. Quite frankly, if it can't be put together, we're cooked because we have a crazy, insane cult leader as our president, and he keeps racking up W's. He may not be able to win this war in Iran. He may not be able to get his approval ratings above 33%, but he's able to beat Thomas Massie, and that is not okay. That is not a circumstance that we can accept. We need, if anything, a Democrat to go into that race and beat the fuck out of this weird ass Ed Galrain ass Republican. I was a member of the FBI. I've killed millions, but I can't talk about it. Only the president. I mean, dude, this corny bullshit. I mean, come on, embarrassing. And shout out Thomas Massie though for having principles at least some point in his career. That being said, I'm not wishing the guy a happy retirement or anything like that, but I just think it's important that we recognize that shit ain't cool. Shit ain't cool, and we can do better. We can win. We can beat this. This is nothing. This is a cult. You think you can't beat a cult? You think you can't beat Jim Jones, bro? Come on. Come on. We got that. Thank you. Like and subscribe as well, please. I'm trying to make it to 114 subscribers sometime soon. Thank you so much for your attention to this matter.
I wanna be at the RNC. I wanna see Patricia McCloskey. I wanna scream for the GOP. I wanna sit with Dan Bongino. I wanna show the American flag that hangs behind the toilet in Grandma's basement.